Randy, all set?
Good morning. This is the November 4th, 2025 meeting of the Downtown Facilities Special Committee, and it's called to order. There are no planned changes to the agenda other than we will be going to executive session later in the meeting, and we'll announce the reasons for it at that time. Is there any public comment? Can I get somebody to move the minutes approval for September 2nd, 2025? Ann first and Greg second. All in favor? Great. All right. Don't have a chair's report other than that we're came a long way and we're finally to the point of discussing actual action items for this project. It's been in the works for 20 years or more. And we're going to move on to a deconstruction update, and we'll pass it over to Holt.
Yeah, good morning. We're going to focus in this meeting on the deconstruction, the sort of status where we have a construction team that is under not under contract technically yet, but has been working with the design team and the county for about 3 months. John from Smith Site Development is going to sort of speak to everything that you've ever wanted to know about how to deconstruct, 3 buildings, and phasing, logistics, site coordination, and then we can take any questions before we sort of move into that stage of the project. So, John.
Good. All right. Thanks, Quay. Good morning, Legislature. My name is John Cabot, as Quay had indicated. I work for Smith Site Development. During the past handful of years, our company has done multiple projects for Tompkins County here, a couple of them being the renovation project up the public safety building. We did the storage building up at Boswick Road, and we also did the Baker dental demolition project. So those are just a few of them. I believe they were all successful projects, hopefully opening the pathway for us to have another successful project here. I think, as Quay had indicated, it was probably early July that we were asked to collaborate with Arel and his team and the Holt team to begin refining a scope involved with the abatement and deconstruction work that'll be necessary to clear the site for the project that you guys are looking at. Between refining the scope and trying to establish or working on timelines, I think we're getting closer and closer to being able to hopefully move in the right direction here and proceed here. I'll focus on what we're planning to do to successfully complete the abatement and the deconstruction there. Prior to the deconstruction beginning, one of the things we will be doing is a precondition survey of nearby buildings, just documenting, whether it be with pictures and or written descriptions, identifying condition of buildings and surroundings of the nearby buildings. This will be just a benefit to everybody, establishing a baseline of conditions of these buildings. We will also, and this is all prior to deconstruction beginning, we will also engage a firm to do vibration monitoring. So the same firm that's doing the precondition surveying, we would also work with them to set up vibration monitoring throughout the course of the deconstruction work. Working with them and their professionals, they'll establish certain limits that when the deconstruction begins, if there's certain vibrations that hit a limit, we'll be alerted via the mobile phones here, letting my superintendent, letting the operators know that we've hit a limit that we need to stop, analyze what we're doing, and see if we can come up with a better way or a different method to accomplish what we're trying to do here. Again, this is all to protect the surrounding buildings, making sure that they're not impacted from what we're going to be doing with our work. At the end of the project, we'll have a post-condition survey more or less just verifying what we had picked up there in the pre-condition survey, making sure there's no changes. If there is any changes, we're aware of it, and we can make sure that we're proactive as need be. So those are a few things that will be occurring before any of the deconstruction work goes on. We will be working with an outfit called LCP Group. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them, but they have been around for quite some time. They do a lot of abatement and deconstruction work in the Southern Tier as well as well beyond. We have worked with them. Smith Site Development has worked with them on many projects, many successful projects, and I have the utmost confidence that they will do a great job and execute as we plan here. We'll have a full-time project superintendent on site. He will act or she will act as our first line of defense, be the coordinator out on site there, just coordinating the activities of what's going on site, coordinating with Arel and his team, coordinating with Quay and his team, and any of the other consultants, as well as the city, as we'll be working hand in hand with them as well. And I'll cover that as we get here a little bit further. But we will have a full-time superintendent. And obviously, safety is always going to be something that we're all going to be very concerned with, and he'll be, again, that first line of defense as far as that goes. The site will be barricaded. We'll have a 6-foot panelized fencing system provided around the perimeter of our site. Initially, we'll just be blocking the driveways off when we begin the interior abatement of the first couple of buildings, but that barricade will be shifted around as the project proceeds, eventually taking over sidewalks and pushing pedestrians with barricades and proper signage and all those other good things to create the barriers and the space or the buffer zone that will be required here to successfully complete this project and meet requirements established by state, especially when it comes to the abatement side of things. Our initial phase of construction, actually, if you got it, yeah, phase one. So just prior to phase one, the initial phase will be the interior abatement, beginning with the 300 North Tioga Street project. That's the old Key Bank building, and interior abatement will occur there first. We anticipate that time frame taking about 5 weeks. We'll have a crew between 6 to 8 men taking care of that. We will then shift over to the professional building, 308 North Tioga Street, and do the interior abatement of that building, which will take another 4 weeks. We're anticipating at this point, for a total of about 9 weeks there. We'll then get into the phase one as shown on this drawing here. That was part of the packet that Quay has put together here. And this is where we go from just blocking off the entrance driveways to the space to actually putting a barricade up and around the 300 and 308 buildings, closing off the sidewalks there, creating a barrier as required by the state as a buffer zone when we're doing exterior abatement. So we'll have the curtain wall system at 300 North Tioga Street and the storefront system at 308 North Tioga Street that will be part of this abatement process and have to come down. Upon completion of that, our fencing will shift over to what is called or shown as phase two here. And essentially what we're doing is just shifting things around here, creating a drive for trucking to come through the parking lot area right now that is in between the buildings there. And we'll begin the deconstruction of the two buildings, the 300 and 308. We'll focus on 300 first, just due to the size of the property, making sure that we've got enough room for the equipment, for the debris piles that'll be coming, and for the trucking. We'll start with 300 and then shift over to 308. While that work is ongoing, it's our hope, based on just our planning and discussions that we've had, that 128 East Buffalo will be being emptied out. So the personnel that are in there hopefully relocated in the time frame that we're doing this abatement and deconstruction of 300 and 308. And upon completion of what we've got with 300 and 308, we'll be over in 128 East Buffalo, beginning the interior demolition or interior abatement of that space. Simultaneously, while that's occurring, we need to scaffold the exterior of the 128 East Buffalo Street. That has a friable stucco surface throughout the perimeter of that building. And so we'll have to scaffold the building, and we'll be approaching it with 2 sides at a time. The scaffolding will basically enclose the building on those 2 sides, along with a plastic barrier, creating a tented space for the abatement to occur, where that stucco will have to be removed as part of the abatement. Upon completion of what I just noted there with the exterior stucco removals and the interior abatement, we'll be able to shift over into the deconstruction of 128 East Buffalo Street. And at that point, will be about 4 weeks or so of deconstruction to complete that work. We'll have site debris cleanup, some grading, and when it's all said and done, we're anticipating we're going to be about 8.5 months on site there between the abatement of the 3 buildings and doing the deconstruction. So it's a great project. We hope we can get started sooner than later. That's kind of a rundown of what we're going to have involved.
Did you have anything on, there was a phase 3 and a phase 4 here.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yes. So the phase 3 was actually getting into, again, we'd be shifting the barricades around. And the phase 3 is shown here is shifting the fencing around to now encapsulate or to take over the area where 128 East Buffalo Street is. And that would be completed phase 3 for the abatement of the exterior of the building. And then the phase 4, essentially the same layout of fencing and barricading, would be for the demolition or deconstruction of 128 East Buffalo Street. So, but it's 3 buildings that have got a fair amount of abatement required, and then the deconstruction that will follow. So,
I'll just add briefly a little bit more about the deconstruction process. So we've been working with Ithaca reuse, Finger Lakes reuse?
Finger Lakes.
Finger Lakes reuse. One of the challenges has been finding markets for the material. So Finger Lakes reuse provides access to markets that can reuse the materials from these buildings. So there's been, the first stage has been, the county has been through the 2 abandoned buildings right now, and everything that you've wanted to reclaim has been removed by the county. And then Finger Lakes reuse is in the process of going through these buildings and saying, okay, what are the things that are safe to remove right now before we abate the buildings? They obviously can't take hot materials to reuse, but are there things that they can, find repurposing for and find markets for us? After they've been through sort of in a simple way, just remove loose things or hung things or things that they can take that aren't hot, the buildings will be abated, and that's where John started talking about the abatement of the interior process. After the hot materials are out of these buildings, Finger Lakes reuse will go back in and begin to identify things that they can take, like, even the drywall. A lot of the drywall is hot, but then the studs will be clean, and we'll coordinate with them and find markets for some of the interior framing and other things that we might be able to repurpose from the buildings. Questions on deconstruction?
Yes, Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you guys are the experts. I have no idea how this works, but I can't help but wonder, something that is so long and protracted a process, requires an on-site supervisor, is probably quite expensive, and we're not even sure there's a market for the majority of the materials. If I'm hearing you correctly, why are we doing this? I specialize in asking the questions nobody wants to answer, but it just seems like we're embarking on a long, expensive process with no real idea of how much reusable material it's going to yield.
Arel, do you want to talk to that?
I was going to actually suggest, Bernard, I think we have a preliminary list of the materials that we do believe can be repurposed, right?
We do for the,
You got to use your microphone, sorry, just so everybody picks it up. Oh, you're good.
we do have lists generated for the first two buildings. That's the professional building and the bank building. We are currently in the process of doing building Buffalo 128. So there is an itemized list that we are going to sit down with the county and Arel, walk through that list to see what we think. And Finger Lakes Reuse is looking into places that they can go. So before we start the process, we should have a very strong idea of what it is that could be salvaged.
Yeah, and yes, I understand that, and that would be certainly helpful to the legislature, but I mean, I think that we need to know whether this is going to yield up, enough reusable materials to make this process worthwhile, time-wise and money-wise.
Right, and I think Quay and John and Bernard, I think they've shared in meeting with Smith and Holt going through the project and Finger Lakes Reuse, we've identified those materials that we know there's a market for. What we're saying is that there may be additional ones that we're not certain that there is a good market for instance, carpeting, ceiling tiles. How far in deconstruction do you think that we could, find materials that there's a market for on the metals, on some of the glass? We know there's a market for that, and those have been factored into the numbers that Smith Site Development has prepared. When we presented to this committee back, I think in early March, and Recycling and Materials Management attended, I think you recall that when we talked about deconstruction, there's quite a spectrum. You can start at the demolition and full deconstruction. We're not there. We're somewhere in the middle. And we may be a little below that because, yes, Deborah, you're correct. It gets more expensive if you want to do a full deconstruction. On this project, so that you know, what is costing a little more than we had expected is the deconstruction in particular of 120 East Buffalo, which is building C, because the exterior has a friable asbestos in the stucco.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and we never would have known that because in all the years that I've been here, we've done interior renovations, so we had no need to do any exterior hazardous building materials assessments. When we did do the exterior, obviously, because we were going to take down the building, we found out that there was asbestos there. It is very labor intensive to remove. As John said, they've got to scaffold it, tent it. There's testing, air testing. There's just a lot of work. That increases the cost for that building and abatement. The other buildings are comparable to what we did at Baker. It's interior, some caulking, drywall joints and things, but nothing to that level on the exterior. And so so even if we were to
demolish it,
even if we were to say, let's just demolish it, we still have to do the abatement. Yeah. So that we're not going to get away from. And in our meetings over the last couple of weeks, I was saying, well, can we get a variance? And I brought up the old library project. Now, the reason the old library project, it also had asbestos on the exterior. It had fibers and that white pebble finish that you recall, because it was brick and there was the drum and a lot of that pebble white finish, was because the roof was collapsing and they were able to condemn the building. These buildings are not condemnable. And so we can't get away with getting a variance to basically take it down with the friable asbestos. So that's really what's driving more the cost for the deconstruction, whether it be deconstruction or even demolition. As far as the salvaging of materials, we're not going to go crazy on trying to salvage and reuse everything there. I think we're trying to be pretty reasonable to know what there's markets for. And so what we're looking at is setting up dumpsters on site where we could capture the metals, the glass, the studs and things like that. We would account for that. That's part of the whole process that we've been discussing over the last 2-3 months, so that we can share with this committee, what we've been able to recycle, reuse, repurpose as far as the deconstruction goes for these buildings.
Are we donating that to reuse, or are we selling it and realizing some benefit from?
So part of the number that we get from Smith site includes whatever money they can get from salvaging and recycling the materials.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. We didn't understand the exercise as, repurpose all the materials at all cost. We understood the exercise as collaborate, and this has been the last 3 months, collaborating with the contractor and the county to say, is there an available market that can either make money or at least break even on the reuse of this material? So one example is, from a carbon perspective, we really wanted to repurpose all of the existing concrete, but to remove the concrete, crush it up on site to the level that we would need to use it to be suitable material as, foundation for the new building was over $300,000. So that's not something that we're planning on doing, but it's, from both a carbon perspective, this is up for the county to decide, but our assumption is that, having conversations with the REL, it sort of hurts from a carbon perspective and from a reuse perspective to ship all this concrete off-site to a clean fill someplace and bring fill that we need onto the project. But from a dollars perspective, it's over $250,000. So these are all difficult decisions, but this is what we've been grappling as a team with, the last 3 months. So I do feel like, the level that we're at right now is a responsible level of deconstruction without, adding deconstruction costs to the project that would, that would be really objectionable in terms of money better spent someplace else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike?
8.5 months seems an awful long time to me. We took down the dental building in a lot less time than that, and we did a reasonable amount of deconstruction. Deb, we have been lobbied very heavily to do deconstruction rather than demolition. People from Cornell programs and other have been down here, and I think that's why we've gone ahead with the idea of deconstruction. What I wondered is, why can't the 2 buildings on Tioga Street be done simultaneously rather than have to do one and then the next one?
Cost.
Yeah, right now, it was a matter of cost, trying to keep it as efficient of a crew out there to minimize the amount of equipment out there on site, and just due to the size and space available.
So your firm isn't big enough to do that?
Now, we are big enough to do it, and certainly LCP Group is big enough to do it. But we looked at it, and from a cost perspective, I feel that there were certainly additional costs there because we would be mobilizing more equipment, more manpower. And the time frame that we have right now, we just felt with the deconstruction as that's occurring and the opportunity to be also performing work at the adjacent building, 128 East Buffalo Street, there's a limitation of space available for the work to occur. So
when we started the process again, 3-4 months ago, there are always sort of 3 legs to this stool, right? There's the cost, schedule, and quality legs. Quality on this project is mostly safety. Let's make sure that these buildings come down safely and no one gets hurt. So we had cost and schedule that we were playing with, and one of the first things we learned was that if you want to do this quickly, it's difficult to find markets for all of the material. So we took a strategy of having a little bit of a smaller crew, starting with, the 300 building, the old bank, cleaning that from a hazardous material perspective, and then using that big open sort of lobby space in the bank as a staging material for So rather than shipping materials someplace to a warehouse and paying for the storage of them until, a market was available, we're using that lobby space of the bank to stage and collect materials for, Ithaca, Finger Lakes Reuse is using that area rather than taking them back to like hold them temporarily and then move them around. So we actually gave, Smith Group and LPC and Finger Lakes Reuse extended duration of time so that they could do this in a way that like we were more focused on cost than we were time. The other thing that I think is helping us in terms of cost on this project is rather than filling, we have a little bit of a strategy, Mike, to finish this building, finish the whole deconstruction process right around when we'll have a new contractor in place ready to take possession of the site. And by doing that, we can keep the site fenced. We can not fill in the whole foundation of the Key Bank building. There's a basement in that building right now. We're going to bring it up to about 6 feet so sidewalks don't cave in around it. But rather than bringing on site all this material and filling it in and then digging it back out for our foundations and shipping all the material back off site, we're trying to save a little bit of that money and just leave it in that condition, which also benefited, extending the schedule, taking our time with deconstruction, like letting these materials giving the materials time to find markets, giving Finger Lakes Reuse, the time to get them sold. And then also not, paying all the extra money to fill in that basement and then dig it back out again. So the plan is to transition this project sort of right to the next contractor when we're ready to start construction on center government. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Okay.
One other small point. I don't know whether any of these buildings have cornerstones or time capsules in them, but if there are, we want to save them, and they would be the property continued of the county.
Okay.
Absolutely agree.
We can do that.
And as we've spoken before, there are other things, a couple things in these buildings that we are repurposing for the new center government building. And one of the things is that metal grate in front of the professional building that we anticipate. Right now, our plan for that is on the south side of the east stair in the new center government building. That grate will sort of go up, through 3 floors of it'll be sort of cut in sections because it's too wide for our stair, but it'll be an expression of that old building in that one stair in the building. So there are other materials that even for the project, we're anticipating repurposing.
Thank you.
Greg?
This is my favorite committee. What is the total cost of deconstruction as we have it right now?
About 2.5 million.
Okay. And Quay, you said previously that you looked at deconstruction efforts that were cost neutral or created some additional revenue?
So we don't know like what's creating revenue and what's, we could really dig in, with Smith Group and Finger Lakes Reuse. So there's a cost associated with Finger Lakes Reuse, just, taking the materials, staging them, finding the market. So our goal from the beginning of the project was to wash out that cost with the profit. Well, it's not even really profit, but with the revenue that they collect from the materials. And so far, that's the case. The only thing that we've paid Smith Group, out of our fee to do the lists, the inventory lists that Bernard was talking about, so that we had a sense of what types of materials, because we wanted them documented and we wanted them tracked. So before we started any deconstruction, that's the document, those lists. But in terms of like profit or break even, we don't have actual numbers on those things, but we're just basically not paying Finger Lakes Reuse to do all of the work that they do associated with, getting these materials to their next life.
So I have a couple more questions.
Yep.
Is that 2.5 a not to exceed, or is that an estimate?
That's a loose bid. How do you want to characterize that?
Yeah, no, it's a budget at this point.
Okay. So when that gets firmed up when we contract?
It will be firmed up by the time we sign a contract, but you're calling it a budget, but it's a preliminary bid. I mean, it's not a bid project,
Spent a
but
fair amount of time here.
I believe it.
Yeah, between going through the buildings and tearing them apart and all the data and information that was put together by Holton and their consultants here, we believe we're very close to what that cost is actually going to be.
All right, so my question, will this be contracted as a not to exceed number, or will this be contracted as, whoops, well, there's more?
Well, we can do it either way. We have some allowances, so it's a proposal that we've received from them. We've reviewed the proposal and made decisions already what to eliminate to reduce the original number. We have some allowances in there as well that could absorb, some unforeseens. We can do the not to exceed. At that point, we would not exceed, but if something comes up that we can all justify that we need to do, then it would exceed that.
Sure.
But it would at least tell them that they can't go beyond that until we have some discussions regarding what the additional work might be.
And then how many square feet of deconstruction, abbreviated deconstruction is this?
24,000, I think, 24, 26,000.
And do you have any idea what this is cost per square foot?
$99.
99? And where does that fit in terms of a market rate for non-government buildings?
Do you remember what? Well, it's more expensive than Baker Dental was.
Why is that?
Mainly, we have $1.3 million just of abatement.
Okay. And so of that $99, you're saying out of the 2.5 million, 1.3 is abatement?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so the price per square foot on abatement, is that in line with what market is?
Yeah, you would review this.
We absolutely believe it is.
Yeah, I guess.
Sorry, we do believe it is, yes.
Okay. With all respect, I guess I would ask those not submitting the bid how it compares to what you've seen in the market.
So two things. One, the abatement bid isn't a Smith Site Development bid. That's
LCP.
A subcontractor bid.
Yep.
So he's more familiar with it than I am. In terms of being in line with abatement, it's not at all in line with the abatement of the Baker Dental building because that material wasn't friable. It wasn't on the outside. I mean, we have over $500,000, almost $750,000 if you include the scaffolding costs just in the exterior of the annex. So it's hard to say, is it in line with abatement? Because abatement isn't like, a sprinkler system is $5 a square foot all day long in any building. Abatement, there's all kinds of materials and there's all different quantities. But we've had a lot of conversations, is this in line or should we be bidding this to other, Smith Site Development could bid this abatement to other contractors. LPC is a fantastic, very thorough, diligent, trustworthy contractor that they have bid other projects and they've come in low. So we've had conversations, we're comfortable with the number, and more than that, we're comfortable with the quality and the thoroughness and the safety of the contractor.
And we feel 8.5 months is reasonable because of the staging, because that's total time on project. I mean, I've seen LCP drop buildings in an afternoon. So it's because of the staging that this is drawn out so long? Or because of the deconstruction?
The deconstruction.
So if we were to not deconstruct after the abatement, how much cost savings would there be?
You would run a number on cost savings if we did no deconstruction. Remember what it was?
I don't quite. I apologize. But I will say, the time frame here, the abatement is a big piece of this time frame here, for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Could you define friable and what that means?
Crumbles.
It's essentially
Crumbly.
any material that can be
Can you use your mic, please?
getting a powder substance. I'm sorry. It is basically any material or substance that can be
It's crumbly.
round in your hand and crushed into a fine airborne product.
I knew what it meant. I just want to make sure everybody else.
Right. Yeah, so when we did the Baker Dental building, just for reference, there were fibrils inside. It was mostly in the asbestos on the joint compound. throughout the building. So that they basically, when they do that, they remove all of it, the sheetrock and the joint compound. They have to tent it, do, negative air pressure. But there was really nothing outside. So we were able to get a variance when we started the deconstruction that we didn't require to do any abatement on the exterior because there was non-friable asbestos on the exterior. The problem we have here is building C, it's friable. And we can't get a permit or a variance unless the building is condemned, which it's not. I mean, the roof isn't falling. It's not flooded. It hasn't been affected by fire.
There's still time.
Okay, Ann Corman and then Deborah.
Yeah, thank you for all this information. So a couple of things that I was looking at as far as would this hold up the construction? And so hearing all the information and the questions that my colleagues have had, it doesn't seem like that's going to hold up construction. And also the other question regarding cost too, especially for the abatement. So thanks for breaking that out. I've seen abatements done, I'll say incorrectly, illegally, not to, because I know there's certain codes that they should be done, and I've seen it done, whether it's residential or construction, where you can visibly see friable material. That I've seen it, and people have complained that goes into people's houses, sits on their windowsills, and the kids, and anyway, it gets into the air, and so there's, I appreciate that, you have the experience to do this, so that we don't affect, there's also the employees that are working on this at the time too, people walking by, so we don't want to expose, the employees. My brother worked for a company that didn't follow all the rules. He developed lung cancer. So I appreciate that we're doing this the right way. So I'm okay with those two things. And I like how, as we're asking more questions, I know there's tons more detail than you're able to say today. We'd be here a long time because I know all the meetings you've had.
3 months. We get it to you in 3 months.
Hearing things about like, okay, we've set it up so that we don't have to fill the hole in, and then, and leave the fencing up. So those are the type of things, that, we're going to talk about some, construction later, but, those are the things, efficiencies, of course, the county is wanting and needing, I'll say, at least from my perspective. And I think that's all the questions I had, but we'll be, even if I'm not here as legislator, we'll be looking and to make sure, that things are done as best as that we can see. And I appreciate you looking at the other neighbors for the condition of their building, because I know I used to be a home inspector, and sometimes I was called in with, oh, there was construction or deconstruction. So will those, that information that you're taking, and I would encourage, you said sometimes it's a description of the building. I would encourage pictures as much as possible so you could compare them later if somebody does have a claim later or some complaint. And so would that, when you're looking at those buildings, would you be done with that then, as far as you wouldn't have to do it again once you start construction? When you're checking with condition of the neighbors' houses, is that like a one and done for the whole process?
Well, again, we'll do that pre-condition or pre-construction condition survey. And then at that point, it's not our intent to be walking around the buildings or anything. If one of those seismographs goes off and we feel there's a vibration to a building, obviously we're going to take a good look at that building, make sure that nothing has changed from what is shown on the report. And then there would be the post-condition survey at the end, which would make any notes if there was any changes or anything of that nature. These documents would be turned over to the county as well, so that you guys can use as required.
And I mean, in addition to that, because the county is going to be contracted with 2 different contractors for these projects, I think that like your post-condition survey will be the pre-condition survey for the next contractor.
Phase.
So it might even make sense to consider third-party contracting of those condition surveys so we can maintain continuity through those. And there will be 3 of them, pre-abatement, post-abatement, which is also pre-center government, and then post-center government. Because if there is finger pointing, we need to know who to point fingers at, right?
Yeah, I like that idea of maybe having an independent contractor do that so we have easier flow and documentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Good question.
Deborah?
Yeah, I guess I would like to know what the cost is of demolition. I appreciate the fact that 1.3 million is abatement, and that's something we're going to have to pay no matter what because of the nature of the problem at 128 Buffalo. But that still leaves 1.2 million that we're spending on deconstruction. And I'm cognizant of how heavily we were lobbied, Mike, to do a deconstruction rather than demolition. But these are the same people that complain about their taxes. So, I don't think that should necessarily be dispositive of how we move forward on this. So I would like to know, what would it cost, including the abatement, to demolish these buildings? And what the timeline would be.
Appreciate that, Deborah. Shauna?
Thank you. That was also my question and request. I also just want to, acknowledge the fact that the first thing in my mind is we want to keep our neighbors safe, and we never want it to be a question if the county's cheaping out on keeping our community safe. So as far as the asbestos abatement, we need to go 100%. There's no cutting corners on that, just to clarify. And then secondly, the demolition versus deconstruction. I mean, I'm afraid that the higher we get and the more expensive this project gets, the more likely we are to lose legislators that are behind the project. And I think we could be at the tipping point of legislators that are ready to not support this project. So I want us all to, and I'm sure we'll have that conversation moving forward, but I think all of us are very aware. We've seen the number go from, what did we start at, 30 million? 40 million?
30 to 40, and now we're at 60.
So we've doubled the project in the past 8 years that I've been on the legislature. And I understand the fact that if we don't do it soon, it's just going to keep doubling. But I feel like this is a runaway train at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions by anybody? My only question is, you're doing inventory of the buildings, of what you think will be potentially for sale or not. Could we get a copy of that once it's completed? Because I know you're doing one more building, just to show and to share with other people that these are items that may be available. I think putting a lot of pressure on Finger Lakes reuse is going to be a challenge for them. And we may need to look at that. So it's a lot.
We'll share the inventory of the items that Finger Lakes Reuse is identified as marketable. Is that what you're asking for?
Great.
Yep.
Randy?
Mike?
Debated whether to say this or not, but we just saw the east wing of the White House demolished in a very few days. It shocked the country.
Maybe we could get those guys.
It shocked the country. And so I think as we go forward, we got to think about how people will react if we just go in and push it down.
Any more questions on deconstruction? Okay, I think that now we're going to go into design discussion and whatnot. We're going to, unless anybody's not okay with this, we're going to go into executive session. Okay with that? All right, so I need to read this. We're going to have executive session for the reason of the proposed acquisition, sale, lease, or purchase of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale of exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Greg, seconded by Ann. All in favor? That's approved. We're going to executive session.